Welcome, Stampers. Oh, geez. Okay, welcome, Stampers. This is Lisa with Queen Bee Creations. Here with today's live, we are doing a fun fold card using the Impressions Abloom bundle and the Floral Impressions Designer Series paper. And I'm excited to show you how the dies work because they're a little different than we normally work with. And this is a fold we've done before. We are actually working on book 3, or I'm working on book 3 for our next fun fold tutorial book. And we did this card and it had an extra layer on it. And we figured for the book, we know that you can add extra layers if you want to, but we're trying to simplify it so that both beginner and advanced stampers will be able to enjoy our book, or my book. Sorry, I have a helper working on with me, so I have to give her some credit there. She's been awesome. So let me get you down to my desk and I will give you a closer look at today's card. Here is the card. It's a belly band that pops open and then has a gatefold with a pop-up in the middle. Okay, we did this, like I said, we did this once before with the wildflower pattern for the birthday card. And in this card, I have those extra layers in here. Okay, and so you can decide if you like the extra layer or you don't like the extra layer. It's up to you. As I said, just for book number 3, we're trying to make things a little simpler. There's also going to be the portrait orientation book card in the book. Gosh, I'm a little flustered today. Can you tell? Okay, so these are what I did in the past. This is today's card using a new bundle, which is new to me anyway, the Impressions Abloom. And so there is this die set where there's the 2 ovals plus all these little flowers and leaves and things that are going to go with it. And we're going to be using these. And the dies, I don't know, they're a little different. As I said, I was a little taken aback when I first started playing with them that this one actually cuts a ring. So it cuts out the middle and that ring. And I'm guessing you could probably glue the 2 together, you know, or somehow find a way to tape them on the back where they stay as one piece if you wanted. And then this could go over the front, or you can lay them this way. If you cut them in reverse, then you could use the one with the single cut as your outside layer, and the one with this double cut to be your inside layer. It's like I said, a little different. Okay, for our papers, we're going to need a card base that is 11 inches by 4 1/4. And then I'm scoring that at 2 3/4, 5, 6, and then 8 1/4. Okay, I've got some designer series paper we're going to be putting on there. I've got the 2 for the front. When I put these gatefolds together, I want to point out that when I do one side, I go ahead and burnish it, but the second side, before I burnish, I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to have those 2 meet in the middle. And you can tell there's a little bit of a bubble here where it maybe if I had laid them flat, it would overlap a little in the middle. And I don't want it to overlap. So I'm just butting it up against there. And then I'm going to score back into that score. Okay, so I worked it back this way, and it wasn't even 1/16 of an inch. But by putting them together first in the middle and then working back into that score line, that's going to get us our best fit in the middle. And I needed it shut because I wanted to show you the pieces we're going to be using. And this actually started out as one big old long piece that was 4 inches. 4 inches by it goes together, I swear it does somehow. I had intentionally laid it out so that it wasn't going to get messed up. And then look what I did. Okay, one of these is wrong. There we go. There we go. Okay. See? The best today. Okay, so this was one big old piece, and it was 4 inches by 11 inches. Okay, now I cut off 2.5 and 2.5. So these are each 2.5 by 4. They're going to go on the front. So we're going to adhere those there. On the inside, I wanted to cut the 2.5, the 1, and the 2.5 in this order so that when I lay it down, my pattern kind of matches up. Okay, does that make sense? So those ones are going to go on the inside. These are going to go on the outside. And then I have a 2 by 4 that's going to go here and a 2 by 4 that's going to go here. We have our 1-inch belly band. So this is 1 inch by 11 inches. And then I have a bunch of scraps where we're going to be doing some die cutting. And then, of course, those ovals that I showed you earlier. Okay, and I decided to use the double stitching to go around here, but it doesn't quite line up. So we're going to have to do a little bit of finagling to get this to lay in there just right, but hang with me. I'm going to keep an adhesive remover on hand and my embossing buddy. Those are going to be lifesavers when the glue goes all wacky. So let's start out here. Let's go ahead and put our layers down, at least our designer series paper. Since I'm a little flustered today, it's going to be better that I get rid of all these extra little pieces. And I don't know why I'm flustered today. I mean, technology seemed to be working so far, you know, knock on wood. And I was actually ready ahead of time and then got busy doing something else and then went, oops, it's time to go live. So I was like a minute or two late, even though I was way early. So, you know, go figure. I'm putting this on with Stampin Seal. That is Stampin' Up's 2-way adhesive, or double-sided adhesive. It's like a double-sided tape. This way. Yep. Again, this is a Floral Impressions Designer Series paper. And I'm building it on a Daffodil Delight card base. All the supplies I'm using are listed in the description of this YouTube video, as well as the link to my tutorial store if you wanted to go check out book 1 and book 2, which have already been released. I'm going to do some stamping, but let's see. Let's go ahead and stamp on here because I want to do the stamping before I glue everything onto it, because we always know I like to do the stamping ahead of time in case there's a boo-boo, we can cover it up. Just flip it over and stamp on the other side, right? So I'm going to start out with the I Appreciate You. And I'm going to do this. I normally just use my clear blocks, but I wanted to show you, I mentioned last week how useful this Stampin' Misty can be. And one of the things you can do is you can kind of finagle it around and decide where you want your image to be. And then it has these nice little lines underneath it. So once you get the kind of the line you need to be under, you can come back here and make sure that that's going to go straight across and line up So when you stamp it, it's as straight as possible. So you can either lay it down on the grid paper on a line and then pick it up with the block on a line, or you can use the lines on here. One of the things, again, about this is that if I was to come in here and, you know, ink this up, and I do a really crummy job of inking it up, right, and it doesn't come out very good, I can come back and add more ink and try this again. And it will go right over exactly where it was before. And you won't even be able to tell that I had to do it twice. So that's one reason you want to use this. The other reason you might want to use a stamping platform is that this stamp set is what we call two-step stamping, meaning that there are two stamps in here, that one goes on top of the other. And again, that's where the clear blocks are going to come in handy. One of the things I do recommend when you are stamping with the blocks is that you lay them down in the same direction. Meaning that I kind of find something that stands out, like this wider difference between the two petals down here, and then mount this on the block the same way with the wider petals down here. If I had them kind of like this, when I go to do my double stamping, I would stamp one and then I'd take the other and I'd have to like spin it around in circles and like figure out where it matches up, right? So by having them mounted on the block the same way, that will help. The other thing is that we can line it up in here, and we would take the first one we want to stamp. I usually go with the detailed because it's darker and I can see better when I go to overlap it. But I'm kind of going to spin that to fit into that corner where I want it to be. Then I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to stamp it. Now I'm just finagling so that I am on the grid paper where there's two boxes above, and maybe we could even go flush to the side if we wanted to. Let's see, maybe that'll keep us straighter. Then we're going to need to come down. It's dawning on me the bigger petals are going to come second, so I need a little more clearance at the top. Okay, so I'm going to align that there, and then I'm going to stamp this full strength. Right into that corner. Now the beauty is I can now take this one off and take my second one, and I can lay it down over the top and really spend some time looking at it, figuring out how it's all going to line up, position everything exactly where I want it, and then close this and pick that up. And now I know exactly where it's going to stamp. Now you can either do this in a lighter color, or if you wanted to do, you know, the stamp off, is you would put a piece of, you know, Post-it note or scrap paper or something over the top of it before you do your next one. So let me just grab some scrap. Here's a good example of one of those that I didn't line up quite right, which is why I'm showing you this. Okay, so I'm going to ink this up full strength. I'm going to come over and stamp it off. I'm going to take this out, and then I'm going to stamp again. And so the beauty of this is I can get two different, quote, colors with one ink pad. Okay. So maybe even I might want to come back in now and do the second one. which I had paper here. Okay. So I'm going to come in with this one. Line this all up. And then ink this up. Stamp it off. Stamp it on. Then you would take this one and you would line this one up. Now, can you see what I mean about how this is so much lighter? While it looks fabulous after it's stamped as our background, it's going to make it a little harder for me to figure out which ones are the petals that are going to line up here. Okay, not that it's impossible, but it's going to make it definitely harder. So again, I'm pulling it closer to myself so I can look straight down from the top. Hoping I'm getting that alignment right. But again, this is why we are stamping first before adhering, because if I goop this up, we can stamp on the other side, right? Okay. So that's the beauty of the MISTI, or one of your stamp positioning tools. If you have the Stamparatus, or I think Ranger came out with one, you know, everybody had one at one point, but now the only thing left is the MISTI. They had a problem with the copyright on it, so nobody else is now allowed to make the stamp positioners, only My Sweet Petunia, and it's the MISTI. So if you wanted to know more about that, it is on my website under the shop and other products I recommend. They are also the same company that makes that fine tip glue pen in the press. So if you have arthritic hands or want to be very precise with a super thin layer of glue, then you might like this. Because it's my job to kind of make things easier on you guys and find out what your challenges are and help you overcome those challenges. So I'm going to just lay those down like that and then adhere them. The other thing we could do is, I guess, go this way. I think I like that better. Okay, so let's do that. Oh, and we need our sentiment. So I'm going to bring in the pecan pie. And stamp the sentiment. I'm going to say thanks so very much. What is the biggest challenge that you guys have when you're stamping? What is it that I can find some tips and tricks to help you out with? Is there something you find challenging? Or maybe you have a tip that you want to share with everybody else. There's always that option too. So there is our card base. Now we're going to work on our oval. Okay, so like I said, I have this frame. It's going to fit like right on the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my silicone craft mat. That is something from Stampin' Up. It's something that glue doesn't really stick to very well. And so I'm able to turn this over, and then I can add a little bit of our liquid glue. And then I can pick this up with a sponge dauber or a regular sponge, just something where I can pick this up and then dab along the edge. Okay, this is in lieu of the adhesive sheets. You may choose to do that too. I chose not to use adhesive sheets because I didn't necessarily want adhesive all the way on the back of this. I thought that was kind of not a good use of my product, because that's easy enough to glue on with regular adhesive. I use the adhesive sheet when things are very fine and a little more difficult to work with. Okay, now I can just rinse this off on the sink. That's going to go away. I might also keep a baby wipe or something on the desk. Or just use this. Because it's a water-based adhesive, I can wipe it off and it's not going to cause a problem. Okay. So you can see that was a little tricky. I even didn't get it quite so centered, and it's not, you're not going to be able to tell. As long as I hit the white part, it's going to be okay. But I had lots of extra adhesive on that ring that ended up popping out the sides. So if it was popping out on the inside, I would use my adhesive remover. This is a just a piece of rubber that, again, it's sold on Amazon. You can find that in my recommendations. You just rub it on the adhesive and it comes off. The reverse is if we want to make this unsticky back, is I'm going to dab this with the Stampin' embossing buddy. And so that, putting a little bit of fine powder on the edge, is just going to take the sticky away. Okay. Now I've already die cut 2 of my flowers. And then I wanted to show you for the other ones, it's actually 2 dies, because you may want to stamp your images and then die cut them out. And for that purpose, you would only need the outside ring. You wouldn't need the inside one. But I want the inside one because the inside one just does this little slits or cuts on the inside of the flower, giving it a little bit of extra texture, and I wanted that. But I found when I set it down on my plate to do my die cutting, that it kind of wiggled around and moved, and it didn't stay centered where I wanted it to. So I'm using some wall-safe tape. You could use Post-it note tape. You could use an actual Post-it note, washi tape, anything that's got kind of a temporary adhesive to it, to just hang on to those 2 dies so that they stick together. Okay, I did the same thing with the center of it. So this was, again, 2 dies. One's going to do the cutting. One's just going to make little marks on the inside, giving it a little extra texture. And by putting them together like that, that's going to keep them centered the way I want. Somebody's asked me if I'm using a regular sponge. This is actually a stamping sponge. Stampin' Up! Used to sell them. They came in a round piece, and then I cut it into sections, kind of like a, you know, Trivial Pursuit. Do you remember that? It had all those little wedges in it, kind of cut like shapes of pie. I think I got 6 out of the round sponge. If you're interested, I can find those on Amazon and add those to my list as well if you're curious, or you can use the sponge dauber. Just dedicate one to be your glue one. I'm going to do both of these at the same time. And it peels off without doing that. I'm just not being very careful because I'm trying to be speedy because we're like on camera here. But see, that one just did our slits in there, and then the other one cuts the outside ring. Now I did have adhesive sheet on the back of this one so that I could just peel this off and then apply it like a sticker. And then they're going to be arranged around the outside of my oval here. And I can kind of lay them out and decide where I want them before I actually glue them down. And then I just lift up one at a time and then glue them down. That's why I stamped the words first, so that when I come back to add my flowers, I know that I have enough room. Okay, so I'm just gonna put that one there. I'm using mini glue dots. And I'm laying them flat. Occasionally I will take at least one of them, maybe the top one, and pop that up on a dimensional for a little bit of extra added oomph, but I didn't this time. And then I have a bunch of these little leaves. There are two kinds of leaves in this bundle. There is this one that it cuts out all in one fell swoop. Which would be these two right here. And then these other ones have the two pieces, so they would work the same way as the flowers did, and that I would tape the two of them together and then cut them out together on cardstock if I wanted them a solid color, and then I would use just the outline if I was stamping them and then cutting them out. Okay, and as you can see, there's some stems and leaves and a different kind of flower. Lots of fun stuff to work with in here. Okay, for the leaves, I'm just going to end up tucking them under there. And I have adhesive sheet on the back of these as well. And I can either pull it all the way off and then powder the back like I did, or I can pull off just a portion of it. Oops. Which I didn't do very well because this has the cut in the middle of it. Anyway, you would leave the top of it still there. You would just remove part of it. Oops. So it's a little harder to do, obviously, when they are all cut through the middle here. But you can see once I slide that under there, how the bottom part I revealed the sticky, and on the top I didn't. You know, I know several people were probably, including myself, were cringing as the leaf came apart, but you can see as I stick it in there, you can't tell. I think sometimes there's a lot of things that happen while we're creating that we think is this major disaster that isn't really. By the time that people get it on the other end, they're not, you know, they're not noticing any of it. They're just noticing what a beautiful card it is and that someone thought of them enough to want to create something special just for them. right? I don't think anybody's ever gone to the mailbox and went, oh, wow, look at this beautiful card somebody sent me. You know, this isn't right. You know, there's something wrong with it. Hopefully we're not doing that. Because it's always the thought that counts, right? Our mothers told us that 100 years ago. Or at least it was 100 years ago for me. Okay. So again, you can finagle around, decide where you want things, decide if you just want one or you want two. Want one to go over here. But play around with it first before you adhere, so that in case you want to like change your mind or move things around, you can. And then we're going to be ready to stick this onto our belly band and finish this card up. So you can see how I've got the backing. Now, if this, bothers you, you can also glue this on here. Again, it's going to have that extra little ring, but on my original piece, I don't know if you can tell, but I had printed something on here and it didn't come out just right. So I'm using the other side and my typed print was showing. So I used this backing just to cover up all that typing. Okay, lining up panels. I do have a little trick for that. My biggest challenge is keeping layouts fresh. Well, watching YouTube videos and checking out Pinterest is definitely something. The halo effect when stamping. Somebody's mentioning that. What that is if you have, usually it's a red rubber stamp that will do it to you, but say there's something like this, and we're getting ready to stamp down onto a surface. A lot of people are a little heavy-handed when it comes to inking up the stamp. So they press really hard into the firm foam, and they're getting that outside ring around there so that when they come down to their project and they go to stamp, especially if they rock it all, they're going to get the outline on there. And I think that's something from our early days. I think in grade school, I remember teachers telling me to rock the stamp. And that's how you're catching those edges. You're either inking it too heavy or rocking the stamp or both. But it's not your fault. It's just something we need to work on. And you don't know you're doing it wrong until you do it wrong, right? This is another great example of when you might want to use the MISTI, because I could have stamped this again and again and again, getting a good solid image without having this kind of fading in the middle. Even though I pressed down really hard on the ink pad and picked up a lot of ink, even too much, we might say, I still didn't get real solid in the middle. So the MISTI helps with that. As far as getting things straight, I might suggest one of the rulers. Now mine needs replaced, but this Tim Holtz ruler, it's one of the things I recommend on my Etsy store. It has kind of grid lines. It's got a line every 1/4 inch, and they're both directions. Again, mine is very worn out. But if I was trying to align something and I needed the edge to be, I needed my edge to be exactly 1/2 inch, I might lay this at 1/2 inch and then come in here and butt this up. Now I can, again, line this on a line down here, and then I've got the line on the side, and I'm going to come up, and I'm going to come up 2 squares so I get my 1/2 inch, and then butt it up there. So when I go down to lay it, it's going to be exact, because we just, technically, we just measured it, right? Another thing I've seen people do is put a line down on some temporary tape and then putting the temporary tape over the edge. But I can show that in something else. But the ruler was my first thought. That comes in super handy for that. Let's finish our card. Because I know y'all are anxious for me to finish up here. Okay, so now I have the belly band, and because our base was exactly 11 inches and the belly band is 11 inches, you might be wondering how we're going to make that work, right? Well, that's going to be easy enough. What we're going to do is we're going to lay this in here, and half of the front is roughly 2 3/4. So I'm just going to come a little bit shy of that. And I'm going to score. And then I'm going to come just a little bit over 5 1/2. Okay, with my score line here. Because I want to give it the 5 1/2 that the card's going to need, plus a little smidgen extra room. Okay, and then I'm going to score here. And it's not going to quite line up in the middle. Okay, it's going to have that little bit of a gap. Okay, but that's okay, because when we adhere it to this, we're going to just go ahead and put our adhesive on both sides, and then we're going to center this over the middle. Okay, and that's going to make sure that that gap still exists so that we have our extra room for the card to slide up and down, but it's hidden behind the panel. Okay, now mine has a little bit of extra room on the side. If you want to, you may want to come a little further with the glue or maybe stick some. At this point, what I could do is take and just lift one of the glue dots off here very gently, because it will kind of roll if I'm not super gentle with it. And then you can kind of lift up the edge, shove this under, and then stick it down. Okay, and that's just going to slide right over the top of our card. Oh, that's another thing I did. I added a little bit of Wink of Stella on here. Wink of Stella is our glitter pen, basically. It's a little glitter-filled pen that has a brush tip end. And you would squeeze it very, very gently. It says push right there. Very, very, very gently. Well, first of all, when you very first get it, you're going to need to open it up and remove the little plug, and then put it back together. Prime it a little, and then all you need to do is just wiggle it around, and it's going to basically paint glitter on. And it just gives it a little bit of extra sparkle. And what's great about it is there's no way it can flake off. And we used to have Dazzling Diamonds, which was a loose glitter. Funny thing is, my daughter in the 90s used to steal my loose glitter and use it on her makeup so her eyes would sparkle. But not really safe to use around the eyeballs, no matter how much I told her. But there we go. There is today's card. Now, Thursday, we're going to go back to basics, and we're going to do a simple card that does not require die cutting and all that good stuff. It's going to be a kaleidoscope tile card. And I can't put my finger on it, darn. Where did I stick it? Oh, here we go. This is the card we're going to do on Thursday. So we're going to glue all these 1/4 inch strips down on one big long piece, and then we're going to cut it all up and rearrange it. It's going to basically be quilting on a card. Okay, I see someone asking about those firefighters that were shot. That was in Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene is pretty far north of me. I'm about 2 hours south of Boise, and Coeur d'Alene is above Boise and closer to Washington. So not real close to me, but still not a good situation. If you're not familiar with it, there were some firefighters who were out fighting a fire that was actually started by a man who then shot at them. Like it was a draw to pull these firefighters out so he could shoot at them. I don't understand. I don't know, and he killed himself, so I don't know if we'll ever find out why he was doing that, but it was definitely a terrible situation and several hours north of me. So thankfully, it wasn't too close, but still not good. Any other questions on today's card or on Stampin' Up? If not, then I will see you back here on Thursday for our Kaleidoscope tile card using Stamping Made Simple. Thanks so much. Bye.